The increasing improvement in sports facilities plus increasing public interest in the sport of mixed martial arts (MMA) makes it possible for UFC to be held in Indonesia in the near future. Discussions about bringing UFC to Indonesia have apparently been carried out. UFC's popularity in Indonesia is quite rising. Especially after an Indonesian was contracted by the UFC, namely Jeka Saragih. This young man from North Sumatra will debut at UFC on November 18, 2023 in Las Vegas, United States. Mola's boss, Mirwan Suwarso, as the holder of UFC broadcasting rights in Indonesia, revealed that the Indonesian government has opened contact with the UFC to hold the fight in Indonesia. The UFC's response has been very positive, but it cannot make it happen in the near future due to its already busy schedule. From what I heard, the government has been in contact with UFC. They hope to hold UFC in Indonesia in March. But Kevin Cheng from UFC vice president told me that March is too soon because their calendar is already full. But they welcomed the invitation from the Indonesian government, holding UFC in Indonesia. Hopefully it can be realized, said Mirwan at the end of October 2023. Coincidentally, Indonesia has a new facility to be able to hold UFC, namely the Indonesia Arena, a multifunctional indoor arena. The Indonesia Arena was first used for the 2023 Basketball World Cup. This modern venue has a seating capacity of 16,000. It's definitely exciting if the UFC is in Indonesia. Hopefully the UFC can be in the Indonesia Arena. If not Bellator or PFL, whatever, but the top UFC has to play in Indonesia, stressed Mirwan. In Southeast Asia itself, UFC has only ever been held in Singapore. Most recently, Singapore staged UFC 275, Teixeira vs. Prohaska at the Singapore Indoor Stadium. The main treat is the duel between Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prohaska. At that time there were 11 fights staged at the Singapore Indoor Stadium, which was located in the Kalong area. There was also a fight between two female UFC champions, Valentina Shevchenko and Taila Santos. The Singapore Indoor Stadium itself has a smaller capacity than the Indonesia Arena with only 15,000 spectators. Jeka's debut at the UFC event can be watched by MMA fans in Indonesia for free. Mola, who holds the UFC broadcasting rights in Indonesia, ensures that Jeka Saragih's fight can be watched without needing a subscription. As is known, when Jeka Saragih paved his way into the UFC through Road to UFC, all his fights could be watched for free by the public at Mola. You're welcome, like Road to UFC. He will fight on fight night. We usually show it for free every fight night. We don't include paid shows, said Mola boss Mirwan Suwarso earlier this week. In fact, Mola hopes that Jeka Saragih's UFC fight can be shared on local television so that more people can watch it. Our hope is that every time an Indonesian fighter fights, we want to show it on our partner's national television. So that it will be even more popular, continued Mirwan.